Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Crash Zoom. I'm Sammie Purcell, Associate Editor with Rough Draft Atlanta, and I'm here, as always, with indie filmmaker Aaron Strand. How you doing, Aaron?
Oh, God. I'm living the life of an indie filmmaker, which is like I'm drowning in a to-do list. And it's all like good things, but it's good things, but it's like hard things, and it's like things that don't pay, but that I have to do, and like it's just working full-time jobs for no money. Living the dream, clinging to the dream. I will say this: it's very, we got some good stuff going on. Withdrawal is going to be premiering or be playing at a whole bunch of film festivals here in Georgia next month. We'll be at Athens Film Festival on August 14th. Opening night film of Athens Film Festival for our homecoming screening. We shot the film in Athens, so that's going to be awesome. And then the next week we're going to be at the Macon Film Festival down there in Macon. And so really excited to kind of do a little Georgia mini tour here. We got more festival announcements coming in the near future. Got the live show coming up at Plaza here at the end of July, screening Harakiri on 35. Check that out over at Behind the Slate Pod. So I got a lot of stuff going on, a lot of plates spinning in the air. Yep. For those who can see the video, I am doing a plate spinning motion. And what this really looks like is a lot of emails. A lot of emails. Got a lot of emails
Love
to
those
send.
emails.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, totally.
I'm still just like, speaking of film festivals, Cameron's film Swapped at Length, which we talked about a few months ago on this pod, got into another film festival. So it'll be at the Cobb International Film Festival, which is July 31st through August 1st in Marietta. So yeah, check it out.
Let's go.
Shameless plug. And then other than that, I'm still kind of recovering from this trip. I worked Tuesday, but it was such a wash, and Wednesday is the day to do all the hard stuff. So, it's going to be great.
Nice.
Absolutely. All right. Well, if this is your first episode of Crash Zoom, welcome. We're so happy you're here. What Aaron and I do here is we talk about what's going on in the industry from a big picture level and try to talk about why that matters to the independent filmmaker. And also, if this is your first episode in a while, if you didn't listen to our previous episode, we are switching up the format a little bit. So instead of talking about a lot of topics for about an hour to an hour and a half, we're going to dive into one topic for 20 to 30-ish minutes and go deep on that one. So before we get to that topic today, if you listen to this podcast and you like what you hear, please hit that subscribe button. You can listen to us on Spotify, Apple, or wherever you get your podcasts, or you can watch us on YouTube at Crash Zoom Podcast. Be sure to rate and review as well. That really helps us out. So let's dive into the topic for today. It's going to be more AI-focused content. This came out. We can't escape it.
What can we do?
It was also, the 4th of July, sort of a slow news week.
Oh, we've been crawling through. And everyone else has already talked about the Paramount merger.
Exactly.
Yes, Paramount capitulated and paid off the president of the United States who extorted them for $16 million. Paramount's going to merge with Skydance. All this means for me is that we finally will get a new season of South Park. That is the silver lining to this giant shit cloud. And that's all I really have to say about that.
I'm so happy for you. It's great. So instead of that, it's been talked to death. We're going to talk about this piece on The Ankler. It's by Matthew Frank. It came out at the end of June. And it's essentially about AI in film school. So it's titled AI Wars Hit Film School. Professors teach it. Students rage. What about our jobs? So this is a pretty interesting piece. I think the sort of typical idea of how college students and teenagers approach AI is an overuse of ChatGPT, which this article gets into. I think that's kind of the typical framework that we sort of work with when we think about how young people approach AI, particularly when it comes to college. And this article kind of flips the script on that, at least in terms of film schools, right? So this article is sort of about how older people in the film industry, you might say people who are already established, are really interested in learning about AI, where students who are sort of caught in the middle looking for entry-level jobs after they graduate are afraid of getting left behind or not having those entry-level jobs to sort of move forward into. So I'll start there just to kind of, I'll stop there just to kind of get us started. Aaron, what did you think about this piece?
Well, first of all, it was a great sort of just barometer take. So they talked
Mm-hmm.
to all kinds of the writer here spoke to all different kinds of people at USC, people at Vanderbilt, people at the head of Lionsgate, Vice Chair
Yeah.
Michael Burns. Oh, did you want a Vanderbilt shout out?
I should say anchor down, Go Vandy.
Okay, great. Yes. Great. Shout out. Great. My favorite quote about was so they did interview someone from a film student who was working at Vanderbilt.
His name was Theodore Pearl, I believe.
Theodore Pearl.
Mm-hmm.
Theodore Pearl. Oh, here's the quote. Shout out anchors down. Theodore Pearl, who graduated from Vanderbilt University this past month, is also embracing the tech, and he says he hasn't really faced hostility around it. Quote, New York is pretty controversial. In Nashville, no one really cares. So, anchor
He's
down.
probably right.
I'm sure he is.
He's probably right.
But the narrative was really framed around a student named Betsy Siegel, who recently graduated from Chapman University's Dodge School of Film. And here's basically a young woman who, for her thesis project, made an AI generated film. The script was written by ChatGPT. She used all these other AI programs that I kind of won't go into in terms of rendering the images of the movie. And it was basically about her experience. And granted, both her parents, I believe, have some sort of background in
Yes.
AI.
Her mother was a writer who earned a master's in AI ethics, and her father worked in cybersecurity and early AI development.
There you go.
Yeah.
There you go. And she's since moved on. She's going to UGA Law School.
I know.
So go Dogs.
Shout out to UGA.
So anyway, Miss Siegel here made this film for her sort of final project of film school. She talked about it at several AI conferences. It was met with a lot of interest. She received a lot of positive feedback on LinkedIn and from professors sort of interested in how she was using this new technology. But when it came time to talk with other students and to have other students sort of talk about what she was doing, the response she got was negative, to say the least. She faced extreme criticism for making crap. How dare you spend, I hope your parents are disappointed in you that they spent $250,000 for you to just make this shit. She received death threats on Instagram for the film, saying that her student short film that's 2 minutes long was quote unquote taking away jobs. It basically, her experience is a microcosm for the broader conversation around AI adoption within, I'm not going to even just say art, I'm going to say within the film industry and the sort of manufacturing processes of filmmaking. Basically, where you'd have one half of the population that is interested in how these tools can be incorporated into workflows and what is the actual practical application of these type of tools and can it assist in the filmmaking process. And then you have this other sort of student and very kind of Instagram heavy subset, which is just like, if you use AI, you need to die. I hate you, very sort of vitriolic, hyper reactionary responses to anybody dabbling in this experiment, this grand experiment that is, yes, being foisted upon us as a population, but is just undeniably a part of our society today. So I thought it was really interesting to sort of frame it within this story. What did you think about Betsy Siegel and her short film experience? Did you get to watch her film?
I did not. I do see this still. Did you watch the film?
I did watch the film. She posted it on Instagram. It would never give critiques of sort of a student project.
Right.
But I thought it was certainly very interesting in its application of AI tools. And look, like it's did it look like it was made by AI? Yes, it 100%
Yeah,
did.
sure. Yeah, it's interesting. Like, she's sort of an interesting person to come into this story through, simply because just by virtue of her parents are like, she is probably, I don't want to put anything on her, but she seems very comfortable with this, and like has had a lot of exposure to AI, and just seems like to be in a lot more of a comfortable place than a lot of people are who are probably coming into film school. Um, you know, to me, this just like really reiterates like how scary this can be to a lot of people, especially when it comes to entry level jobs. Like, I think like there's a section of here that kind of quotes an NYT report that talks about sort of like the unemployment rate for recent college grads has increased dramatically due to artificial intelligence. And I think in the film industry in particular, where like the use of this technology is so forward facing, I would say, and has been like such a hot button such a hot button topic in the media with the strikes, and kind of how all of that really centered around the question of I completely understand that there is like a ton of fear kind of based around like what will happen to me when I get out of film school, which I think was probably always there to begin with. It's a pretty fraught industry always. And I was going to ask you if you had any thoughts about that. But I do think that obviously this is sort of like compacting it. And the outgoing president of the Academy of Motion Picture and Arts and Sciences, Janet Yang, who kind of is like, talks about like teaching these things to students, but not like pushing them to use it, which I would kind of think would be like the happy medium. Like, I do think it is important. This isn't going away. Like, it's important that people know how to use these tools. And, but I do understand at the same time, like, there is a real fear that just like these entry level sort of like positions that can get you started in the film industry are just going to disappear.
Well, I understand the argument. I think that,
Yeah.
first of all, the New York Times article that you cited in terms of, yes, Gen Z is having a really, really hard time getting hired out
Getting
of
jobs.
university.
Yeah.
Now, if I remember correctly, a lot of things in that New York Times article is talking more on the sort of financial business side of sort of entry level jobs.
Yes, it's outside of the film industry. It's like kind of a general thing.
It's not about the film industry. And also,
Yeah.
it's not entirely clear that it's AI who is replacing these people. The job market as a whole is not as robust as one would say. We just had a federal jobs report come out where they're touting this sort of unexpected gain in the number of jobs, but almost all those jobs are from the, if I remember correctly, it's from the healthcare, and that we're not seeing robust job growth sort of across all sectors. And because there's like economically, we're in this incredibly difficult moment in America where things are just very, the uncertainty index and what the future holds is very not clear. And historically, those moments have not led to a lot of hiring. Now, when it comes specifically to filmmaking, oh God, it's like I don't know how to untangle all this, but I do think that if you go to films, if you are going to university, if you are going to pay an astronomical amount of money to get a degree, and that degree you expect to guarantee you a job in the field of your choosing out of college, pick anything other than the arts. Like, it has always been the lowest career placement of university offerings. I do think that, look, I'm torn because I think that the university system is great in so many ways, and it does protect the sanctity and legacy of education and around artistic disciplines, and it does allow things about the arts to thrive that the marketplace doesn't accommodate to. However, I do think that it is incredibly manipulative that every university over the last 15 years, or so many universities, I should say, not every, but so many universities have instituted a film program because it's, look, film is sexy. It attracts students. It looks cool. It seems cool. It is cool, but there's not a lot of money in it. And there never has been. The film degree complex generates more revenue than most film jobs do, ever. And so, look, if you are going to school from the perspective that, like, you expect this degree to pay out in a defined way, you have already you've already misunderstood the assignment. If you are going to school because you feel, look, there's nothing else I could possibly imagine doing with my life besides
Right.
pursuing this art form because I have some degree of skill, talent, and passion, and I have figured out a way to pay for it either through support or I'm willing to take on the loan, or my parents have the money to afford it, and I accept the responsibility that I may never be able to pay back the money that is being invested into this education, then like maybe it's worth it, maybe, but like I do think that the film industry gets wrapped up in these kind of narratives that don't actually support the reality of working in the film industry. I mean, this even goes back to like, people are locking arms and saying we've got to protect, look, like AI is coming to take these jobs away. And the truth of the matter is that it is, but filmmaking has always been this extreme outlier within the spectrum of the arts in terms of creating stable middle-class careers. And that is a byproduct of the fact that filmmaking is the only art form that has a serious manufacturing component to the work. Film is the only art form that requires like real manufacturing at scale. But we can look back at the last 150 years of history around manufacturing and see where the story goes. As technology innovates, these manufacturing jobs either get outsourced overseas or automated. And I thought it was really interesting. This guy Ken Zifrin, who's the co-founder of a company that I have no idea what it does. It's called Zifrin Bittenham. They just like dropped it in the article and didn't provide any context. And I didn't look it up before I got on this podcast, which I should have done. But anyway, Ken Zifrin here, he said, industry shifts have meant advising students to, quote, learn the most you can out of the tech side and the distribution side and the marketing side, because he's concerned that, quote, less and less production is going on. What does this sound like? This sounds like that the film industry and the people who actually know about the historic changes of economies, they are looking at this and saying, we are going from a manufacturing-based economy and we are transitioning into a service-based economy, just like all of the United States has done, like every industry in the United States has done. We politicians go on and they talk so much about manufacturing jobs. It is such a small portion of the American economy. The American economy, the most powerful economy in the history of the world, has transitioned into a services-based economy. It looks to be that some people think that the film industry is like moving in that direction. And whether it's up to us to decide what's good or bad, there's always going to be good and bad elements to these transitions, but this is what is happening. And I think it is a credit to these teachers and to these professors that they are being honest with their students about the reality of their situation.
Right. It's sort of something where I'm like, as much as like you might wish it wasn't the reality, that's not what school is, I guess, And I'm also like sort of trying to remind myself like these are like 20-year-olds, like everyone's very like all the students kind of interviewed in this piece are very young. Like I think of myself when I was 20, and like going into a new job market is terrifying. Like I was going into journalism after grad school. It's really scary going into something that is sort of like on the cusp of failing at every given moment. But one thing I thought was really interesting and kind of like think speaks a little bit to what you said. It's towards the beginning. I just had it. Let me find it. Here we go. So it's kind of one of the first sections. It was a student who just graduated from Wesleyan, Gemma Rosa Ryan, and she talks about kind of moving to New York. She moonlights as a writer. She's interning for the New York Times, etc. And she says, quote, a lot of her filmmaker friends aren't heavily pursuing entertainment industry jobs. Instead, they're going the scrappy route with a 9-to-5 to pay the bills while they make their own projects on the side. And I was sort of like, well, isn't that what filmmakers have always kind of done? Like after the studio system, at least like recently, kind of, I don't know. Maybe I'm not like literate enough in the history of it all to know, but that doesn't feel like a particularly new sort of deal to me as far as being a filmmaker.
It's not. That's the other sort of like misnarrative or just false narrative around sort of like how to make it in this industry, because no one knows how to make it in this industry. It has always been a mysterious and seemingly impossible endeavor. And when you start talking about like, oh, AI is taking our jobs away, or sort of like this middle class quality of life, I mean, let's talk about what that middle class quality of life actually looked like. I mean, you're still working gig to gig. If you're going to work in film and television, you're working 16-hour days, being ground to dust, night in and night out, just trying to make six figures. And the truth is that if you want to be a filmmaker, if you want to be a writer, director, or you want to be an editor, a producer, or whatever, you're not going to get there by working up a logical system, from PA to, best boy to like the head to like the electrics department.
I love that term. Sorry, off
yeah,
topic, but best boy.
Yeah. But like, the grip to director pipeline has never been like one that was like greatly established, right? Or like, and look, like this is no disrespect to best boys grips, to dolly grips, cam ops. Like people do find like good, stable, well-paying quality of life jobs, and the fact that those things are going to be cut back on because studios will be asking productions to do more with less, that sucks. But I do think that is not exactly what these students like think are saying. I think that these students have a sort of a slightly unrealistic linear road of career trajectory that I certainly, in my experience, have not found to be true. And I don't know that any of my peers or any of my fellow filmmakers have found to be true.
Right. I really think it's something that's like foisted upon you when you get into college. Like, obviously, filmmaking is like, or the film industry is a different thing altogether. But like, I totally believed at one point that I just like, I don't know, get a job right out of college and work at the same company forever, like my mom, like, you know what I mean? And like work my way up the ladder. I think that's just like what is sort of taught to you at a young age or at a teenage age, whatever it might be. And so kind of learning that that's not what it is something that everyone sort of has to go through.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, there's going back to sort of like our main protagonist in this story, Betsy Siegel, she referenced a metaphor that I'm sure she heard from her parents or something, an analogy. She said, my favorite analogy for this is a carriage wheel factory. When cars were invented, people were all afraid that the jobs would go away in the carriage wheel factory because they wouldn't need carriage wheels anymore. And now it's a car wheel factory. The jobs didn't go away, they just pivoted. You might not be making the same thing, but there's still jobs available. I think overall, I think she's probably correct, but I also see the sort of reactionary quality. I always think about that. So, as a little like film nerd digression, these great cinema houses, and a few of them still exist. We have one here in Atlanta at the Fox Theater. They house these incredible electric organs, and all silent films were really designed to be scored by electric organs. Now, granted, at sort of their grand opening, they would maybe have a full orchestra, but as they toured across the country, they would expect an electric organ to be accompanying the film. Now, these electric organs were very special because they were designed by this British guy named Robert Hope Jones, and he created all these organ inventions that essentially allowed a single wind-based organ to replicate the tone and timbre of every instrument in an orchestra. That was his like grand idea behind the electric organ. And when he began installing these electric organs into churches in the late 1890s, mid 1890s, people freaked out and they like destroyed and sabotaged all of his early organs because they were like, you're replacing our orchestra, you're replacing our instruments, you're replacing our choir with this bizarre, weird electric instrument that has like this, all this scary new technology. And the organs came and they peaked. And at a certain point, people also got sick of hearing organs anymore. And now it's like seems ludicrous that they would ever destroy these organs. Now, I think AI is going to be a bit more transformative than the electric organ. Yeah. Although I will say that, like, if you were living in 1910, the most common instrument you would experience in your life was the electric organ, just as a reference point. However, I do think that some of these, the hyper reactive nature of people going out and destroying organs is a little bit like what people are doing to those who are willing to at least experiment and try AI within their workflows. I do think it's reactionary, and I do think that it is it is unfair to those who are seeing how these tools could work for them.
Yeah. It's difficult, and I'm always like, I want to take into consideration, you know, people's concerns and stuff, but I do think this seems to be the way we're sort of going. And learning about this stuff and at least how it works. Like, there's a quote from a professor, I think her name is Susan Galloway, and she's sort of like it or not, learn to use it. And if you learn to use it well, you will have jobs. Now, like we've kind of been saying this whole time, like AI is going to get rid of jobs. Like that is also sort of something that is definitely going to happen. But if you do know how to use it and this is something you want to work in, that might be an asset for you too, as much as it like might suck, like,
Yeah, maybe it's not the
yeah.
job. It's not the job that you thought you were going to be reaching for when you entered this industry. But nothing is forever. You're not going to be doing the same thing for forever. And like,
Right.
look, I think, as I try to organize my thoughts of like, how do I feel about this overall article? I mean, like, it's not all to just like, shut up and take it and be
No,
cool with
no.
AI. I mean, be critical. Look, like,
Yeah.
yes, push back on the claims that AI will replace human creativity. Question, whether the companies that make these tools have humanity's best interest at heart. Be suspicious of the push to incorporate AI into corporate workflows that are like therefore going to replace the very people who incorporate them. And follow the research on the negative effects of AI on critical thinking. Like, we're getting some very first research on what the consistent use of AI does to the brain. It's not great, like shocker,
No.
and so consider deeply, use your critical thinking while you still have it, to consider the trade-offs that come with a new technology, because there always are going to be trade-offs, and some good and some bad. But you also you don't get to be a full-on hater until you've tried something.
And I totally get it. Like there's Siegel, one of these professors also says like there are students who are quote very reluctant to touch AI with a 10-foot pole, unquote. And I'm like, that's also like totally me. Like I totally get it. Like I never use it at work. Like I really don't like it. I don't think it like makes my workflow faster. But I'm in a different industry. So I am so sympathetic to the view that I don't even want to deal with this at all. But I think just the way things are going, if you want to work in the industry, you got to at least know how it works at this point.
And like also, let's
Like,
be real, like in making a movie, there are piles and piles of bullshit
yeah.
work that where you're literally like shoveling bullshit from one side of the room to the other. And like that is like the equivalent of what it feels like to actually make a movie. And we should be looking for ways to like cut down on that type of work, and looking for ways where we can find efficiencies. And then on the other hand, look, like for thousands of years, people had to sew and weave and make their own clothes. And for thousands of years, this labor was primarily, put on women and families. This bullshit labor was put on women and families to like, and hours and days and years of their life were taken away by this bullshit labor that they had to do to like fucking make clothing. The Industrial Revolution comes along, makes clothing like super easy. Like people had to embrace it and adjust to it and whatever. And then some really smart people came along and who loved to sew and they loved to hand make beautiful clothes, and they sold people a story that actually handmade of attention to detail was not only like superior, but it was actually like way more valuable, and it signified your exclusivity and your specialness to have these type of clothes. And we get as a result this like high-end fashion luxury industry. There's no saying that can't be the same reality when it comes to filmmaking. So like you got to stay mobile and flexible and be open to multiple narratives, and not just like attach on to like, this is good, this is evil, and this is the only way that I see the world, especially when you haven't even been willing to try out the tools yourself.
Right. I get it, kids. I get it. but let's try to look for the positives, if we can, or at least like learn about this stuff. Like you said, like keep your fingers on the pulse of what's going on with this stuff, figure out the ethics of this stuff. All right. Have you got anything else to say? Sorry, my jet lag's kicking in again.
No. That's all I got. That's all I got for today.
All right. We used to do this at the beginning of the episode, but to round us out here, what have you been watching this week, Aaron? Anything fun?
I've got some things on the watch list. I'm going to be diving into some films from Masakai Kobayashi that I have not seen before. I'm really excited to watch a film called The Inheritance. I've seen like all the big heavy hitters. Obviously, this is in preparation for screening Harakiri on 35mm on Thursday, July 24th at the Plaza Theater for the next Behind the Slate Presents live show. I've seen the heavy hitters, Harakiri, Kwaidan, Samurai Rebellion, and Black River. But there's a couple films one's called The Inheritance, which he made right before Harakiri, and the other one is called like If These Walls Could Talk, or like The Thick Walls or something. I don't even remember the title of the film. But I'm going to be doing a little Kobayashi deep dive to try to like get a little further into the filmography. He's such a baller, dude. This fucking post-war Japanese filmmaker is just such a high quality of art. It's just amazing.
Nice. I'm excited for that screening. I will try to be there. I'm pretty sure I can. So
hell yeah.
Exciting. I am also got some things on the watch list. We actually, while we were in London, we went to the BFI, and they have a really great shop, and it was a lot of fun. And we got a couple of collections, some Blu-ray collections that we're kind of hoping to make our way through over the next few weeks. So we got the early works of Michael Powell. So that includes films like The Night of the Party, Behind the Mask, Hotel Splendid, stuff like that. So hoping to make our way through some of those. We also got a couple early films of Akira Kurosawa were in a big kind of collection. I can't remember what those were off the top of my head. I think Akira was in there, but I'm having trouble remembering some of the other ones that are also in there. Maybe Stray Dog as well.
Stray Dog would definitely be,
but yeah,
Stray Dog would definitely be on the earlier side.
Yeah, so excited.
Maybe you'll get like some of these, like, even when he was making films during the war, like Senshiro Sagata Part 2.
Maybe I don't have it in front of me, or I would check, but it's like some pretty early ones. I think there's like 5 or 6 in each collection, so I'm excited to make our way through those.
If this box set contains the film No Regrets of Our Youth, which is a film he made right after the war, I want to say 47. I hope that's right. I usually have my Kurosawa filmography pretty well memorized, but I want to say 47, 48. Anyway, this film, I love this film. I think this is such an discussed gem from Kurosawa's filmography. It's the only film he made with Setsuko Hara, the star of all the those great Ozu movies. Yeah. And it's really his only film with a true female protagonist. I mean, he was pretty male focused throughout his career. Just a wonderful, wonderful melodrama about sort of post-war Japanese life. I think the storytelling is so great. You see all of his like early instincts of camera work that kind of blossoms throughout the 50s and 60s. So if that one's in that box set, No Regrets of Our Youth, you are in for a treat.
Awesome. Yeah, we'll check it out. I'll look at it either today or tomorrow.
All right.
Awesome.
Well, yeah, this has been great. Another great episode. Thank you so much, Sammie. If you enjoyed this episode, please like, subscribe, rate, review, hit us with the 5 stars, leave a little comment, show us a little love. As always, you can follow us on Instagram and on TikTok at Crash Zoom Podcast. You can email us, crashzoompod@gmail.com. That is crashzoompod@gmail.com. This has been wonderful, and until next week, Sammie, I will talk to you.
Talk to you next week.
Bye.
Bye.